In the golden days of Olympus, when the gods ruled with power and majesty, Apollo, the sun god, shone with particular glory. Son of Zeus was revered for his divinity and talent in music, poetry, and especially in the art of the bow and arrow. The story begins after an event that marked Olympus and the earth, the defeat of the serpent Python. This monster, feared by all, had been a constant threat to gods and mortals. With his unique skill and dexterity, Apollo had achieved what many considered impossible. He brought down the serpent with his accurate arrows. This triumph earned him the applause and admiration of the other gods and a sense of pride that began to grow in his heart. As Apollo rejoiced in his victory, his attitude began to change. It was no longer just gratitude for having saved many from a dire fate, but a kind of arrogance that began to tinge his words and actions. He began to boast of his prowess in his close circle and throughout Olympus, claiming that no other being, divine or mortal, could match his skill with the bow. While Apollo strutted about, Cupid, the mischievous god of love, watched from afar. Often underestimated for his youth and the seemingly frivolous task of arousing love with his arrows, Cupid felt slighted by Apollo's arrogant words. Apollo's vanity was evident not only in his tone but also in his posture, in how the sunlight glinted on his hair like golden threads, and in his confident smile. One day, as Apollo was again narrating the story of his victory to a group of admiring nymphs, Cupid crept up. "Apollo, master of the bow and lyre, do you think your skill with the bow is comparable to mine?" asked Cupid with a sly smile. Surprised by the interruption and considering the question trivial, Apollo replied with disdain, "Little Cupid, your arrows may provoke passing loves, but my arrows can hit any target, no matter how distant or difficult." Cupid, with a spark of cunning in his eyes, decided to teach Apollo a lesson. He drew 2 special arrows from his quiver, one golden, love-tipped, and one lead, aversion-tipped. With a mischievous smile, Cupid pointed to the sky and shot 2 arrows of opposite nature. The first, a golden arrow, pierced the sky and struck Apollo's heart, infusing him with burning passion and uncontrollable desire. The other arrow, as dark as night and made of lead, flew through the air towards the earth, where Daphne, a nymph of rare beauty and free spirit, lived. Daphne, oblivious to the whims of fate, delighted in the tranquility of the forest, enjoying the stream's coolness and the bird's song. A lover of nature and dedicated to her independent life, Daphne found her happiness in the serenity of the natural world, far from the intrigues and romances of the gods. Under the sway of Cupid's golden arrow, Apollo beheld Daphne for the first time as she walked through the woods. Her beauty was like a flame that burned the heart of the god. Her eyes shone like stars in the night. Daphne, oblivious to the spell that fell upon Apollo, moved with the natural grace of nymphs, her feet barely brushing the leaves of the forest floor. The god, moved by a deep and immediate love, began to follow her. His words, charged with passion and desire, echoed through the trees. "O beautiful nymph," cried Apollo, "why do you flee from me? I am Apollo, who plays the lyre better than anyone else and never misses with his bow. I offer you a love as bright as the sun that rules my days." However, Daphne did not feel the same way. At every word of Apollo, her heart closed more. She, a nymph accustomed to the freedom of the forest, did not desire the love of a god or any mortal. Her only passion was nature, and she wanted to maintain her independence. Apollo begged Daphne, telling her of his love, of the life they could share. He promised her that she would be revered like no other, that she would have a special place on Olympus, and that she would never lack for anything. But Apollo's every word only added more urgency to Daphne's steps. Daphne, despite fear and fatigue, maintained her firm refusal. There was no room in her heart for the love of a god, for her greatest desire was to remain free, mistress of herself, unbound to any being, mortal or divine. Apollo, not understanding Daphne's rejection, intensified his efforts. He composed songs in her honor, creating melodies that mortal ears had never heard. His poems spoke of Daphne's beauty, comparing her to the brilliance of day and the serenity of night. But every verse and note only served to drive Daphne further away. With his golden mantle billowing behind him, The god did not understand the rejection. Is not my love insufficient? Is not the love of a god the greatest thing that can be desired? He would ask as his glowing figure made its way through the forest's shadows. Daphne, whose only ambition was to preserve her independence, felt fear growing within her. With each passing moment, Apollo drew closer, his presence imposing like the sun. "It is not love you offer," she cried. "It is a chain that binds me to your will." Looking to the sky, she implored her father, the river god Peneus, for help. Her words were urgent, a mixture of fear and hope. "Father, if you truly love me, change my form, release me from this persecution." She did not want her beauty to be the cause of her unhappiness. She longed for a way out, any way out, that would end her anguish. As her pleas floated to the heavens, a miraculous change began. Her soft skin began to harden, transforming into a rough crust. Once graceful and full of life, her beautiful arms were now twisted and elongated, becoming sturdy branches. Her delicate hair, flowing like a golden river, metamorphosed into vibrant green leaves. Her feet, barely touching the ground in her frantic running, sank into the earth, taking deep, strong roots. Still blinded by his desire, Apollo stopped dead in his tracks as he witnessed the transformation. Before him, where once stood the beautiful Daphne, now stood a stately, sturdy laurel tree. His eyes reflected a mixture of awe and sorrow. He had lost his beloved, but even in her new form, he could not help but admire her. Approaching the tree, he stroked its bark with sadness and respect. Although Daphne could no longer speak or move as before, her essence remained in that tree, immortal and beautiful. In that moment of silent recognition, Apollo promised, "Though you can no longer be mine, I will honor you forever." He decided that the laurel leaves would be used to crown the most significant poets and heroes, thus honoring the purity and beauty that Daphne had always represented to him. Therefore, every time a laurel wreath adorned the head of a victor, it was a tribute to the nymph who had transformed herself to escape the love of a god. Moreover, in her new form, Daphne would still be present at the most remarkable achievements of mankind. Alone, in the silence of the forest, under the shade of the laurel, she ended the pursuit of Apollo, leaving behind a story of love, desire, and transformation.